So today we're here. This is the Texas A&M uh, Gaming and Media Lab mini lecture series. This is our third lecture. This is going to be an interview style with Gabriel Duran. He's an assistant professor at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Woohoo! Go Islanders! There we go.
Yes.
And we're here on Zoom today, working out of our houses and meeting up. We'd love to have you come visit us sometime soon, and we would love to come visit you sometime soon. But today we're doing virtual because this lecture series is actually on our virtual meetup days. So we typically have a meetup, as you may have heard beforehand. Brandon, one of my students, was bringing it up that we typically meet virtually, and this whole lecture series came out of that meeting.
Nice.
We were meeting, I guess, almost a year now, and online every Wednesday. And I guess about a month and a half ago, we all looked at each other and said, "We know each other pretty well. We should have some people come and talk," you know. And and so I literally messaged a bunch of people, and everybody got back to me and said they could do it. And so we have a month worth of programming that we've been doing, and it's been amazing to hear everybody's stories. We had Tanya Ali, who I believe you may have met before. She was at your program for a minute while you were there, I believe. And then we had Than Niles speak, and now we're having you. And then next week we have Sebastian Bisbal, who is an MFA from UT Austin.
Nice.
Graduated from there, and he's based out of Chile. And he's going to be talking about doing independent media production in South America. So we're super excited to have you today. And we had discussed earlier, Gabriel and I, like, you know, we messaged back and forth, kind of like, hey, so what's really happening with this? And like, hey, how do we, how do you want to format this? And I'm really flexible because I think it's because I podcast so much that as much as I like canned presentations, I really do like interviewing and kind of going back and forth. And so when you said, Joey, interview sounds great to me, I was like, let's do it, because I think you get to find out a little bit more about people when you use that format. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, thank you so much for being here today. As you can see, we've got some people here, but we'll also be streaming it. Or not streaming it, but putting it up on our YouTube channel for other people to see. And then, as I informed you before we started, I told you about how my department and my university's restructuring our whole system. I mentioned it to my colleagues that it's really interesting to get to talk to someone that's doing potentially what we may end up doing in terms of developing some other kinds of art programming. And so without further ado, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to start with or just say hi.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and have this conversation. And anytime there's conversation about filmmaking or the progress of filmmaking or students involved, I love having that conversation. So I greatly appreciate you having me here today. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And so what I'd like to do, and what I like to do in general, is kind of just ask people, like, how did you get into filmmaking and specifically going to school for filmmaking? Like, so, and I know this is cheesy, at least for me it's cheesy, but it's the stuff that I love, is like, what were some of those first formative moments, like as a kid, that kind of led you to that? And then like in school, and then we'll talk about your program, but like, I'd love to just kind of.
It all started as a kid. When I grew up, MTV was a big hot thing. It was the it thing to watch on television. You had this music that you heard on the radio all the time, and now there's a visual to it. Like, oh my God, right? So coming home from school, and I would come home to my grandma's house, and of course at my grandmother's house, it was all Spanish stuff. And we had the little brown box with the zippy thing for the cable. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that, but it was a little box that had the zippy little remote control thing that you would zip across the channels. Always, I knew where MTV was, and that's what I would go to every time I got home from school. So it was always MTV that kind of latched on to that. But the specific one that really got me into like thinking about like the possibility that somebody's getting paid for this was Michael Jackson's Thriller. That's the one that really took off for me, as far as like, holy crap, like that mesmerized me. Like I could sit and watch David Bowie, Cyndi Lauper, all these different music videos that were being played, but something about that video, I would sit down and literally watch. I could watch it over and over and over and over. And to the point where I would overthink it and think about, wow, there's actually somebody out there getting paid to shoot this stuff. And of course, I think a year or two later, they actually showed the making of Thriller. You know, they went behind the scenes and stuff. And that, from that on point, that seed was planted for me. But as a kid in Wichita Falls, I grew up in Wichita Falls, Texas, a small town kind of close to Oklahoma, maybe 15, 20 miles from Oklahoma. Yeah. There, it's just a pipe dream. I mean, nobody in that town is going to be a filmmaker. You know, you would go, you go to college, or you go help your dad at the restaurant, or that's your life, right? Never in my mind would I think that a kid could actually go out and go to school to be a filmmaker, because there was nothing like that in Wichita Falls.
So your parents had a restaurant?
No, my family, all of my family, my dad's side ran a restaurant called Casa Mañana, famous for the red tacos and stuff like that. And they ran that restaurant for many, many, many years. And as a kid, you know, we would go there. Instead of having the summer off like other normal kids, we'd have to go help my dad at the restaurant. So it was never a summer off for us, right? So that's kind of like that aspect of what life was for me as a kid. And that's what it was, the planting of the seed of Thriller, and how people are actually getting paid to do these things, you know. And many years had passed, and, you know, I got married, moved to DFW, opportunities there, DFW, you know.
Big city.
Yes, exactly. And, you know, I decided to become a business major, went to business school, and, you know, I remember in accounting one, sitting in class and the clock is ticking and I can hear it. And I'm like, I don't want to count money for the rest of my life. Like, I don't want to do this. So I just basically got up in the middle of class and I left, and the professor's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to be an accountant. Nothing to accountants, but that was just my decision to move on to something different. And I found out that they would actually teaching film, you know, in video and editing at Northlake College. And from there, I transferred over to Northlake and started doing that. And then I just transferred over to the UTA. So that kind of started my journey into to filmmaking.
And so, like, can you give me like an era in this? Is this like DV tape? Is this
MiniDV?
MiniDV? Okay, okay. I just try as a anthropologist. This is why I'm always so interested in hearing like where people start, because like I went to UT and I was, you know, we were the last. I didn't, but like my colleagues were the last to use 16 millimeter. Mm-hmm. And then and I was using DV because like I was a digital kid. I was like all into digital, and people, you know, were like, film superior. And I was like, okay. But like, I don't know. I just like this. I like new. So I was like messing with it.
Yeah, it was a hassle with the MiniDV. It was just, you know, having to capture the stuff after you shot it, putting it into a little recorder to capture it digitally. And it was just a process that we learned. And yeah, it was right about that when MiniDV was hitting it's kind of the end of MiniDV.
So when did you find like your place for storytelling?
You know, like most of my fellow colleagues, when you're a beginning filmmaker, you have to really find your niche and find who you are as a filmmaker. At that point, you're learning so much at one time. You're learning about framing and composition and camera and storytelling and lighting, and, you know, all of that kind of thrown at you at once. So you're trying to just take this in as a sponge. Some students at some point decide really what path they want to take. They decide if they want to be a cinematographer and that's what they focus on, or they want to be a writer and they focus on that, or they want to be a gaffer and focus on lighting, or a DP. So they want to focus on different areas. And to me, I think more than anything, I was more into the writing aspect of things. But, you know, I would start to see the abundance of films that were coming out of the universities and schools and colleges, and I would see the repetition of story. What I mean, we were college students shooting college films, which means that everything that was coming out of the universities was based off of college life, you know, the relationship aspect of it, waking up in the morning, getting ready for school, hitting the alarm clock, the basic stereotypical student film, right? And there was not a difference between that film and this film and this film. It all had the same basis, same foundation. And I wanted to get away from that. And I think I was one of the first students to actually think about me as a person and what stories I wanted to tell. And I think I really went out on a limb and decided to tell Latino stories that were in Spanish And it's funny because I don't speak Spanish fluently. I don't write Spanish fluently whatsoever. But I wanted to tell those stories to separate my stories from everybody else's. And once I started to find my niche and tell the stories that I wanted to tell, that's what really separated my films from everybody else's. And that's what I try to tell my students as well is, finding your niche and understanding that, we're not going to be telling the college film. I don't want to hear stories of you waking up in the morning, having to deal with the test. No, y'all live through that every day. Who wants to see that again? Like, we don't want to see that. And I think that's the biggest hurdle you have to overcome in being a beginning filmmaker, is to get outside of that stereotypical bubble, what I call the university.
Yeah, no, I mean that's such a good transition to like how you got into teaching. Was that, you know, I totally relate to you, because it's funny because like, I mean that's a lot when I'm having students do their first films, like I'm totally cool with that, like with what we're talking about, to kind of get the basics down of like editing. It's like, okay, I get it, you told your day, like I mean, I don't know how many for like what I do in my day, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
their very first project, like, and it's good to just see their chops, their editing, their audio, like do they know how to just exude a theme, like, because then you, yeah, and then you get a little navel gazing as a professor. You're kind of like, man, that's like the best one I've seen, and you're still just but it's still just a shot about their day.
Yeah.
It's like them getting up from, hitting the alarm clock is one of the ones that they're always like very proud of. They're like, I used the alarm clock, and you're like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
got that nice shot of the alarm clock in there.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I brushed my teeth. You're like, yes,
yeah,
you
the
did.
famous bathroom shot of them brushing their teeth in the mirror. That's the whole cliche of everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah,
And the one that's risky, that goes to the shower, and they like show like steam coming up from the shower,
yeah.
whatever. I had a student like show them like washing their hair, and I'm just like, I get it, you're edgy, you did it, you did it.
Yeah, yeah, but that's what it was for me. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
to
yeah.
separate my story from everybody else's, and finding. I told I was a happier filmmaker, and I would write better when I told stories that I knew, and not trying to tell the everyday story of the everyday struggle that everybody's trying to do in that bubble of university life. Is to me, it's mundane. I mean, who wants to see a film of the same thing that you're going through? Like, it's
Yeah.
it's about expanding the world for people and the viewers out there, and I think once I found that niche for me to really start focusing on films that relate to me and my target audience, I think that's when I really start to find my niche into filmmaking, really starting to really love it as a
Yeah,
result.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you how did you go from, because you did that for undergrad, right? Like
Uh,
filmmaking as an undergrad, and then you went and got your MFA, right?
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So how did you decide to go get your MFA, and then how did you go from getting your MFA to becoming a professor?
Well, honestly, when I was in grad school, I mean undergrad, I was seeing a lot of my fellow filmmakers who did their best that they could in filmmaking, and graduated with a degree with X amount of films under their belt, which is great because that's what I love about UTA, is that when you graduate from there, you have a number of films under your belt that you've done, that you've directed, that you've produced, right? And that's a great thing to have a resume built in for when you graduate, you have something to show. But I was starting to see a lot of my fellow filmmakers starting to go back to the same job that they had when they were in undergrad, and defaulting back to that. And what I really loved about the professors at UTA was that, my professor, Yaki Smith, he was getting paid to teach film that he loved, at the same time had a steady income, right? He didn't have to go hustle and find the next gig. He was teaching what he loved and still had the time to shoot his films, and I thought that was genius. I mean, for you to be able to teach film and be in that world every day, right, and have a steady income and still be able to shoot your film is definitely the route to go. So I decided, that's what I want to do. After I graduated, I took some time off, because who doesn't get burned out with school, right? I mean, that's just part of life. And then after that, you decide, I want to go back and get it. So I went back and got my MFA. And then from there, I decided, I'm going to go ahead and try to get into university and start teaching. Now, it did take a while with adjuncting and all that stuff, and try to get into the door, and going from university to university. It takes a while, but I mean, once you get that love for it and the passion of seeing a student go from not knowing what a camera is to actually shooting a full-blown film at the end, it's a complete rush. I love that whole experience for me.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned Yaki. As crazy as Yaki went to UIW where I taught.
Yes.
No, but he didn't, I mean he went before I was there, but he went to UT when I was at UT. And so I was like in school with him, like he and I knew each other. So it was crazy when Terry, you know, our mutual friend Terry, was at UTA, you know, with
Yeah,
Yaki,
he was there. Yeah.
and I was like, dude, I know Yaki, like that's crazy. And then he ended back up at UT Austin. I was just like, she's man,
Small
he
world.
steals everybody, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so then like I met you through Terry, like I mentioned, because I have another there's a student here named Anthony Ramirez. He's a PhD candidate at our program, and he has a podcast called Academics and Amigos. And but before that, I was listening to Terry's podcast, you know, and you were on Terry's podcast, and I was just like enamored by it. And then he asked me, I mean, I think you and I connected somehow. We ended up talking and just having I had at least I had a great conversation with you. And then when I saw you go to TAMU CC, I was like, whoa, that's cool. Like, I was like, because I know how hard it is to get a job, like personally. Like I've
It
applied
is.
for a ton of them as an academic. And so, you know, one of the anthropological parts of me is like, can you talk a little bit about what it was like going through that tunnel of getting landing it with TAMU CC?
It took a lot. It took a lot. It took a lot. I mean, because when I was in grad school, I was still being I was a adjunct at Texas A&M in Dallas. I was adjuncting for them. I was teaching one class with them for a long time. And that kind of got me my foot into the door as adjuncting. I was already a TA at UTA, but being an adjunct there at A&M Dallas kind of helped me propel in my direction towards university employment. And of course, you know, one of the biggest things for me for my success, honestly, and it's the truth, is film festivals. Film festivals, because a lot of these professors that have known me or that do know me is because of my films that have screened at certain festivals and because professors have seen my films. And that really helped me when I applied to certain universities and they remember me as a filmmaker and my film. And I think that's what really got a lot of these professors excited about the work that I'm really trying to do and try to put out there. And that kind of helped me get my foot into the door. And
Yeah.
that's what really, honestly, really helped was that.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't mean to jump over it, but
No, no,
I
no,
want to
that's
talk. No, in terms of the film festival that you established and run. Do you want to mention that, or
yeah.
I know that's side to that's a side project to TAMU CC. Is that like you started and work with the film festival, like you?
Yes. You know, being a filmmaker and being at multiple festivals over the years, it was always weird to be in a festival where you have a block of films, right? And you see different faces in the crowds. And a lot of the films were great films. Don't get me wrong. Of course, they're made into the festival, right? But none of the films really related to me and some of the crowd members that were there. And it was the same repetitive type of collection of films at every festival. And I decided, you know, why my target audience is this group of people, right? I feel that I would actually hit more people if I would target the target audience and show films meant for that target audience. So I decided, you know, why not start a Latino film festival that relates with Latino culture, Latino art, Latino films, and target those people to actually want to see those films. Because there is a demand for that, like a huge demand for Latino art and Latino films. And there wasn't an establishment in Dallas that was already there running at the time. There was something done many years ago. I forgot the name. I think it was called Las Vistas or something that was started a long time ago. It was pretty big. Then it kind of faded away. And then for many years, it was just kind of empty, right? You would have all these big film festivals in Dallas, but nothing really procured to like Latino films or, you know, anything Latino. You might have a block of short films. You might even have one Latino film or none at all.
Yeah.
So I decided to really dedicate a whole festival to that. And you know, this will be our 5th year running, and we've been really successful at getting films from all over the world, having world premiere films that have never been screened in the U.S. And I'm really proud that, you know, there's a lot of like, artists out there, especially in South America or even in Mexico, who can say, you know what, thank you for giving me this chance to screen my
Yeah.
film in the United States. And that to me is wonderful feeling, to be able to expose these amazing artists from all over the world to say, hey, these guys produce great films, just sit and watch it, understand the culture, and be familiarized with what we're trying to say. And that's how that festival started. So it's been a journey. It's been fun. And we continue to do it to this day. We're actually getting to the point where we're actually having multiple satellites now. There's going to be FDCLA North and FDCLA South. I'm going to be opening one here in Corpus Christi. And then soon there will be a third one in Wichita Falls. So there's going to be maybe 3 entities of FDCLA over the state of Texas.
Wow. Well, we definitely like I'm premature, but like we definitely want to collaborate on that CC.
Yes, yes,
That's
definitely.
cool. So okay, so to really tunnel in on TAMU CC. So what happened? Like one, like how did you? I mean, I know you just applied for the job, but like when you get there, like what's the lay of the land in terms of, because for me, when I got my job at UIW, like I understood, oh, they have this lab, they have these resources, they're gonna kind of ask me to do some stuff, but like where did you start and where do you feel you're at?
I know the program. When I got into the program, they only had one professor, a great guy, who started running the program, and it was the only one guy who was kind of doing both documentary and narrative. So they were very limited as far as what they could do, And it so happened that when I applied, he was also leaving, so they had 2 positions open. So TAMUCC had hired one specialty for documentary and one for narrative, which is me. So that really expanded the program a little bit more. So they're able to dig a little bit deeper as far as how many classes they can teach per semester, because now they have more faculty. So that really, really opened up a lot of different avenues for us to start to pave the way. And I know at the program at that time, they were really getting into bottlenecking when it comes to amount of classes they could teach and so on and so forth. And trying to really figure out what the student, like any university, when you transfer from one university to the other, I had to have a feel for like what the students know and what they don't know. Like any university, it takes about a couple of semesters to figure out what you have on your hand, because the students at UNT are definitely different from the students at TAMUCC.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Definitely different. So I had to figure out exactly what the students knew, how to adjust my teaching, and how to adjust what we're going to be teaching ahead of those classes, like prerequisites, to get these students to be all on the same curve and learning everything that we want to teach them by the time they graduate. Okay, so that's one of the biggest things, is try to figure out what they know, what path are they taking, and what are they learning on that path. And I think that's the biggest puzzle for us, especially now that we have an extra professor who teaches doc. Now we got to learn, okay, let's figure out the ins and outs of where these students are going to start and where they're going to end, and what are they going to learn on that whole path.
And that's a really good point of like where they start, and where they end. Like it sounds so simple.
That's not simple. It's not.
And because there's to me, like there's the storytelling side, and then there's the production side, like in terms of screenwriting and developing your story, and then production side in terms of pre-production, production, and post-production. Like, where do you take them on that journey? And then for me, since I do new media, it's really convoluted, because I'm thinking TikTok, I'm thinking Netflix, I'm thinking the big screen, I'm thinking all of them. You're all at the same time. Like, okay, like, oh, this idea is really simple. Like you could just do a TikTok channel and like do TikToks of that. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, like I think that way. Or yeah, this should be made into a short film. Like one of the students here, her name's Callie Johnson. She she came to me last spring with an idea for just wanting to learn more about production. I put her in contact with with a Facebook group from UT Austin, and she kind of sussed that out, and she was like, well, I really want to get some hands-on experience. And I'm just like, well, let's figure this out. And so that's what we did. We started building out this whole idea, and that's like how we came to even to be honest, like I saw how you've been there 3 years. How long have you been?
This will be my second year.
Second year? Okay. Dang, man, you've done a lot. Like I'm really impressed. Like I'm really, really impressed, because like this past summer, what was the production that you all undertook? Like, is that was that outside of school? Like you took it on and you had students help? Was it part of school? Like, cause that's how we work too. Like we do some part of school, some just like because people want to do it.
Yeah.
And that's, I saw you working with your students doing a shoot and others, like professionals working with you too.
Um, so what we have right now, we start off our students in intro to production, which is kind of the basics of, you start with the camera. This is composition. This is pacing. This is lighting. This is how you use, your iris on the camera, all that kind of basic stuff. You start to learn in intro, and then you take those basics and you go into intermediate, which you start to learn about pre-production, and focus more about how to produce a film correctly and how to be prepared to shoot a film, and then also a little bit of post in that. And then finally, when they get to advanced, which is a lot of some of the stuff you probably saw as well, in an advanced film, we take all those ideas and we throw money on top of that. Now you have to think about how to raise money and how to handle money, how to handle people outside of the city when you're bringing them into for lodging and preparing food, and having to really be on point when it comes to scheduling, because if you shoot over, you got to keep that person another day. So that's more money out of your pocket, that type of stuff. So we just keep adding. And I think for the stuff that you saw first was advanced film, where the students take all of what they've learned and they shoot one film for the whole semester. That's the whole goal. And what they do is they actually come together as a collective and they hire each position. Nobody is given that position. They actually have to pitch for it. They have to actually have a resume. They have to actually stand and present to their fellow students and say, hey, I want to be the DP for this film. And they have to actually say yes or no. And a lot of it's kind of weird, because I tell my students, just remember that whatever you do in intro will follow you along all the way to advance. Because if you come to late class all the time, if you don't participate in your groups all the time, that'll come back later in advance. And that actually happens a lot, where students are like, we like this guy, he's the best cinematographer, but he doesn't show up to class. He never answers communication. And that really affected that person who really wanted that position, right? But they didn't get that position because the fellow students already realized who he was as a person and as a student. So that teaches them a lot as far as like communication and being dedicated to a project and being dedicated to your group. So a lot of stuff that you saw in that was me being executive producer, which I oversaw the whole project, right? I was there to guide, but they were the ones that actually put it together and actually ran the whole thing. But I was their executive producer to say, that's a good decision. No, that's not a good decision.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And then during the summer, they revamped a class that they used to have where as a professor, I was able to get money from the university funding and actually shoot my own film with industry professionals and have a few students shadow those professionals. So they would be on my film set, my film, and they would actually shadow the DP or shadow the sound guy. And that's how we worked during summer. And it just so happened that I was working with A.B. Quintanilla, and we actually collaborated a lot. And this is one of the first films he's ever been working on, was this short film. So he was on set as well. And that gave them a whole nother experience as well, to be able to work with somebody of that magnitude.
Wow. Yeah, no, I just put that for people that don't know. That's Selena's brother.
Yes, he's the Cumbia King, the guy who wrote all of Selena's music, most of Selena's music. Yeah, he's the man. Yeah. Genius for sure.
Yeah.
But that's what you saw, a lot of that, and a lot of just working with students one-on-one and being able to push them beyond boundaries that they thought they could reach. A lot of them are really stuck in the university life and not really willing to go outside of that bubble. One of the biggest things for me pre-COVID, and even now that COVID's kind of go away, is that anything that you shoot as far as your film projects in intermediate and advanced are not to be shot on campus, period. You cannot shoot anything on campus. I don't want to see a single damn palm tree in any of those films, like nothing. And that's the biggest thing, because I want them to be able to go outside of their bubble and to be able to network outside of this safety net that they have.
Yeah, and it's the coast, so there's a lot. And then, man, Corpus Christi, just like here, just like in Bryan, College Station, there's a lot within 2-3 hours.
Yes.
A lot of different scenery, a lot of different things you can see and experience, and cultures and people, like going from narrative to doc, that you can partake with. What, I didn't think of it this way, but you bring something up that we've been doing, which is that on our meetups, when we meet up to do like outdoor production work, we've always met up in downtown Bryan, which is about 7 miles from campus. and it's in this whole other space. This, I call it La La Land. Like if you've ever seen the Gilmore Girls,
Mhm.
like Dawson's Creek, and they're like walking in that downtown, and there's like a coffee shop and an antique store. That's exactly what our downtown looks like, but like Texas style. And there's like some microbreweries as well, and like the hood is also right over there. So like you can transition real quick and see lots of different dynamic spaces. So when we go do hands-on work, like that's actually where we meet up, and it's been nice. Like students do go down there and do it, but like you said, it's I call it dorm syndrome, kind of like you're talking about, where they're like looking around like, what could I do in this place?
Yeah, no, no. To me,
But
it's the
again,
easy
for
way
like first
out.
and
Yeah.
second projects, I'm always fine with like just to see their chops of video, like. But like when we start breaking out, that's when I'm like, all right, let's see what's different.
It's to break out of that feeling of being safe and understanding that in the industry, especially when it comes to media, anything, you have to network. I mean, you
Yeah,
can't go out there solo and expect not to expand and to get bigger and to be able to get your work out there without networking. You have to be able to get outside of that normalcy of normal life at a university level, and that's what I'm really trying to teach them. And I think in advanced film, that's where they learn the most, is because I'm just sitting back and watching this thing unfold. And it's amazing because these students have responsibilities other than answering to me. They have to answer it to another department, because what they do is they break out to different departments. You'll have an art department, you'll have a DP department, and then you'll have the production department. You'll have all these different departments. They're communicating together, right? So they're
yeah,
not just answering to me. If one person drops the ball, everybody's going to you as that department. So that really, really helped the students feel a sense of responsibility. And I could see them actually working outside of class a lot more and talking about this class a lot more than normal, because they were
yeah,
excited that they were doing something on their own.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's so cool. Like it's what's cool about what we're doing is it's all outside of class. This
Yeah.
everybody that you see here, there nobody's in class. Like everybody came, all the students that are here like came here because like they're interested in what's going on a Wednesday night. At
On a
6
Wednesday night, right?
on a Wednesday night at six
Yeah, yeah.
o'clock. They're here, and they've been here like for months, and so we've been building up like piece by piece, and like even like I said yesterday, we did our streaming stuff, and so we've built up like a good 5 to 15 students at a time. How big is your program in terms of students? Like how big is the program, and then how big are your classes roughly?
Most of my classes, I usually teach like this semester. I have two sections of intermediate film. One has 15, the other has 12, I think. So they're
Yeah.
small classrooms, which I like.
Mhm.
When I was teaching at UNT, I mean, my intro class had 80 students in it. I
Whoa.
mean, that it's a
Yeah.
ton to have a production class with 80 students.
You
You
can't do
know,
that.
yeah,
I mean, you
it's
can,
just
but
you
the
can, but I mean, how many
gym.
students? Yeah, how many students are having hands-on experience with the camera, so on and so forth. So it's a little bit different.
That's how it was at UT, and it was I got gypped. Yeah, yeah, no, it was because it's just it's not personable.
No, it's not as personable. I mean, and I have the ability to talk to these students group by group, because
Yeah,
usually I have them do one film a piece. Well, they do like a silent film and then they jump onto the main project. So I'm only dealing with two groups at a time, two films at a time at any moment. So I'm able to break into their breakout sessions and talk to them individually, talk to them as a collective. How's the film going? Did you do this? Did you do that? And making sure they're doing all the checks and balances. And I could switch over to the other group as well and do the same thing. And that's one thing I really love, is having that one-on-one communication with students and understanding, what's working for them and what's not working for them.
cool. Well, so hold on, Karina, can you lower your volume a little bit? I can hear my echo on my wife's my wife's laptop. But anyways, normally I would text that or message it, but I was like, yeah, she can hear me. Um, So normally I would like, because I have all these questions for you, but like we actually only have so much time. And so what I would like to do is open the floor up, because I can see a lot of people like turn their cameras on and are like listening, and there's already one question in the pipeline here. And so I'd like to kind of allow some room for questioning, if that's okay with you.
Of course, of course.
All right. So Anthony, you want to ask your question? I mean, I know you typed it in there, but feel free to just, yeah. I have like 3 questions. See, I told you.
Oh,
All right.
the whole conversation, I was just like writing like questions and ideas of like what I'd love to ask you. But thank you first for being here. As a Latino myself, Mexican American kid from El Paso, I'm like really happy to see fellow like Raza doing some amazing things, so awesome work, and just it's really cool seeing what you're doing. So I was
Thank you.
curious, like with all that in mind too, like and what you were saying, and I wrote this one in the chat too. Do you teach, or would you ever want to teach a class dedicated to Latino, Latina, Latinx film studies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what I really want to do, is really enforce that into the idea of storytelling for me. And I think that's one of the reasons why it kind of brought me down to 10 UCCs, because they have that connection of, majority Latino population here in Corpus. And I think I can relate to that a little bit more as far as connecting with the students. And I think it would be a great idea. I never really thought about it, on that sense, because I'm more of a filmmaker, but I think that's a great idea. I mean, I don't see why I wouldn't want to. I mean, I love anything Latino. This is what I do. My film festival, my art, everything is related to that. So of course, yeah, I think it's a good idea.
So with all that in mind too, and I think you just set up a perfect transition for my other question. As you can tell, I do have a podcast. What are your thoughts on the current status of representation of Latino, Latina, Latinx film or television shows? And what are some current shows that you recommend or are inspired by at the moment in terms of narrative, I guess?
I had a conversation about this yesterday, about, right now I'm watching Narcos on Netflix. And then they're asking me, that stereotyping Latinos, and it's in the wrong light. But I'm like, look, let me tell you something. I was told by a really producer friend of mine named Nancy de los Santos, who was a producer of a lot of films with, oh my God, my name is going blank here. She was a producer in Selena, Gregory Nava. She did a lot of producing with Gregory Nava. And she's a Latino advocate. Just a lot of stuff that she does is towards Latino culture. And she told me, you know what, it's always good to have, people want to say it's always negative stereotypical ideas to show the image of Latinos being the waiter or the lawn person. But those are true. Those are real identities of who we are. But the thing is to tell the truth about that, not to lie. Those stereotypical ideas, we might have the gangster or the narco. Yes, that really does happen. Some of us are that way, but at least tell the true story about who those people are. So to me, representation, Narcos is amazing, because guess what? They're hiring Latinos, they're on screen, they're getting paid. That's the image that people are watching, not just us, but other cultures as well. So I don't see nothing wrong with Narcos. I think it's a great story to show. I think that not everything has to be that way. For instance, Selena, the series came out, and I love that they actually did the series on Selena. But one thing I really, really have to really pick at as us as a culture is the pulling of Latinos in the industry. We don't support a lot of art like most other cultures do. Something about Latinos are like crabs in a bucket. What I'm saying? How they want to bring people down instead of push up. And that's one thing I really, really wish us as a culture would get over. Instead of celebrating the Selena series, a lot of people bashed it because she didn't look like it. She didn't have the right lips. Her body type wasn't the right way, all this other stuff, right? Instead of supporting the series and getting it up there and just supporting the hell out of it, we want to bring down. And that's one thing I really hope to break, is that Latino stigma of crabs in a bucket. That's one thing I do not like, but we're moving in the right direction for sure. Gentified is out. That's another series that's out right now. I think there's a lot of potential for us to really grab the lead in a lot of these stories, but we have to have more of us telling those stories, and I think that's what it is. We need to have more creators telling short films and feature films. It's good to be doing, the TikToks and the YouTubes and stuff like that, but we need more filmmakers telling these stories and to be able to propel us in that light. I want to do Latino Film Festival because I feel we need to have more exposure. People out there just sitting back, start your own Latino Film Festival, show more Latino films, be an advocate. Don't just sit down and do nothing, do something about it. And that's what I'm really trying to push people out there to really, really help by pushing that Latino image,
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, I have one more question. I promise I'll stop. What are your thoughts on academic research intersecting like with film projects? And if you've seen an example already, what's an example that you can see or have seen intersecting the two?
Research with filmmaking, is that what you're saying as far as combined? I mean, a lot of that I see more in the documentary side of things.
Mhm.
I think that's more of a, I'm not a documentary filmmaker. I wish I was. I just don't have the patience to shoot a documentary. I'm more about like, there's a script and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm done. But I see a lot more collaboration when it comes to documentary filmmaking on that side of things. I've never really, personally, never really had that type of collaboration with anybody. Now working with AB and doing certain projects that we're working on, there's some people that we're talking to have an insight on certain things, that's kind of helping in the narrative aspect of things. But I see that more of a collaboration of a documentary, because you got to have that insight, and have those facts and have all that information between academics and filmmaking. Yeah. I
Yeah,
appreciate the questions. I definitely do. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm curious, what are some Latin filmmakers or certain Latin films that influence like your view on either Latin films in general, or also like the current like viewpoint of kind of like films in general, at least?
Well, I like the old filmmakers, but I still like a lot of the like, for me, like my top films out there that I've always kind of gravitated towards. And it's funny because it's not done by Latino, but are the actual films themselves. One was definitely City of God. I think to me that was one of the ones that I really gravitated towards. As far as Latino films, Mi Familia from Gregory Nava was another one that really stuck with me as a Latino filmmaker, because of the culture that was being told and how the story was told. It's beautifully done. And to me, that was everything for me. It was, wow, this is a story. It's an American story, but at the same time, it's a Latino story that anybody can relate to. But it really stuck to me as a Latino, because to see a lot of brown people on screen and to tell such a beautiful story. And it's a great thing, because I know this is one of the films I show in media forums, which is a class that I teach, that I show films from different genres and stuff. And a lot of students have never even heard of Gregory Nava, have never seen Mi Familia. And that's one that's on my list that I show my students. And majority of the students, that's their go-to film for the whole semester, is Mi Familia, because of the story that's being told and how beautiful the culture is, and the ups and downs that people don't really see of what a family goes through being Latino. Those are the films that really stick with me. They really do. Now, when it comes to new stuff, I'm a Guillermo del Toro fan, of course, and of course Duran, Children of Men, stuff like that. Amores Perros. Those are the films that really I'm drawn to. But I'm kind of a student of everybody. I'm a student of everybody. I mean, I take a little bit from Francis Ford Coppola, a little bit of Duran, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I try to transform my own ideas in my own stories, of personal stories, and also from stories that I hear in my family. To me, that's where it comes from. It's like any musician; they take a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and create their own work. It's the same thing for me as well.
Anyone
Yeah,
else have
and
a question?
sorry, like one more question, like
Go
something
ahead.
else. Like one of the interesting scenes that always interested me is like the film festival scene, notably like certain film festivals such as Toronto, Vancouver, Sundance, and I'm curious, both any like notable films of like in any film festivals that you've like you take a look at, and also kind of like sort of the overall kind of like impact / importance of like film festivals in the film landscape in general.
Well, film festivals are super important to any filmmaker. Like I tell my students, why are you shooting 30 hours of film and 30 hours of editing to have it be stored in a hard drive somewhere? Like, to me, that's just, it's just nonsense. If people put the time in it and put the effort into it, you have to screen this stuff. You have to have an audience to see the work, and it's very important. And like I said, for me, film festivals, everything. There's people out there who want to shoot films go straight to sell to DVD or Walmart or whatever. Me, I'm more about the art and having my message out there, and to have as many people watch it as I can. And film festivals are important. A lot of these other, big name films that are out there have started at film festivals, at short films, and they expanded into something bigger. Because it's the exposure that's out there. It's the prestige, and not even that. It feels good to have your film watched in front of a different audience in different cities. There's nothing like it to sit in the audience with everybody and they're glued to the actual screen watching your project, watching your film. And to have people ask questions about the film. Where's the idea come from? What was the hardest point about it? What was the easiest thing about it? And I love that whole feeling and the whole aspect of being together with other lovers of cinema, you know, and it's important. I think a lot of people who are actually in filmmaking or in media want to have that experience of being able to have your works screened and shown and to be exposed in that way, you know. That's the experience that everybody kind of wants. What was the other side of your question? I'm sorry, I'm kind of just went off on a tangent.
Oh yeah, are there any like certain notable like Latin films that you've seen in any like film festival this year so far?
Well, this year it's funny because I usually I'm really attached to a lot of film festivals, but this year it's been such a hectic year for me. I really haven't really seen anything lately. In my festival, there was a couple of documentaries that really stood out for me. That were really impactful for me. What I really loved as far as what they did with it. The names I kind of slipped my mind here, but there are a couple of them that are one is called The Sound of Marimba, that really stuck with me, was a documentary. And I think that one I really loved because it was talking about the culture of the marimba and how it was colonized. I can't even say the words. Colonized. How do you say it?
I'm like you, dude.
Yeah, I'm
like,
kind of stuck on that word. Anyways,
canonical. I know what you mean.
But anyways, I love the whole history of the marimba, what it meant for the culture, and that would really stuck with me this year. Like I said, I haven't been in the circuit out there lately. This year's been really hectic for me. I have my own film I have to edit. I have other films I edit. So I kind of got disconnected this time, after COVID type of thing. So sorry I couldn't answer that question as thoroughly as I could.
So going off the festivals, you know, it's interesting you mentioned that because Than, who spoke last week, you know, he's definitely, you know, plugged into the festival circuit. And, you know, he was talking about showing his film in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And like you said, like getting your work out there and kind of like you talk about like downloading music versus listening to it on LP, like, or going to the live performance, you know, going to the film festival has its own visceral experience that just can't really be replicated, you know, watching it on streaming or something like that. I know this spring we got into the Ann Arbor Film Festival again to do a presentation, which I'll talk to you about if you're interested in. You can be on the panel with us. I mean, or bring students, just like I offered last time. I know we got busy last time, but I'm definitely like that's still open. But yeah, it's having taken students to film festivals, like I took Terry, you know, to the film festival that I'm talking about. It's just really, it just has an impact that's just different. You get to meet enthusiasts, you get to meet people in those other departments, like you talk about arts, you know, cinematography, sound, promotion, you know, marketing. Like you find a little bit of everybody and independents that are doing a little bit of everything. So, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know we're hitting right up on 7. Gabriel, this couldn't have been better. It's like the only thing that about it is it was short. As you can tell, we all like really loved hearing what you had to talk about. If it's okay with you, I would definitely love for us to come visit you and your students at some point in the spring. I think it would be really, really cool to check out what y'all are doing and just share a little bit. We're working on a film that Callie came up with along with other people here, and we're using our equipment that we have. We just, you know, I have a Sony A3 with a bunch of Rokinon Cine lenses, and that I got from school. We just bought a tripod. We just bought a DJI Ronin. We just bought a boom pole, like just like, you know, minimal things, you know, boom pole and mic, and we have LED lights, and you know, just enough to like start doing something. And so hearing you talk about it is great. And if we could come and see you and your students, that would be awesome. So maybe we can work something out.
Definitely, and always know it's not about the equipment; it's the story.
Yeah. And that's what we've been spending the past 6 months on. So that's a good, it's a good way.
Yes.
Yeah, and then we've just been working on our skills. Like I said, every Tuesday we meet up and work on our skills. But the story is the thing that we've been needing, like literally, like just needing over and over again. So it's been a lot of fun. And I don't know. Any last questions? Well, thank you so much, Gabriel. We'll be in touch. Like this was amazing. I can't thank you enough for your time. Um, Man, yeah. I want to do this again and just talk to you. Maybe even have like a round table with you and your students talking about it. Because to me, as a Latino, as someone that is from San Antonio, Texas, told I worked well with my hands and should become an AC repairman, and ended up doing what I do, kind of like you're talking about growing up in Wichita, not thinking you were going to be where you are. Like you said, being able to teach and empower other people and create trajectory for them and create space for them, and also get to be creative. Like we're even unique to our colleagues in that we really do get to go have fun. Like our job is the fun part. Like some people are going and teaching classes they don't want to go teach, but that's what they get paid to do. We get to go and teach the classes we love teaching. And so it's an honor and a privilege to get to do it. It's not just like a taken for granted kind of thing. It has a lot of meaning. So I'm just enamored. So thank you so much, man.
Thank you guys for the questions. Thank you for having me here. I wished I could answer everybody's questions thoroughly, but I appreciate the time, and I'm definitely open to anybody reaching out if they need help with anything or have any concerns or questions or anything. Just find me on Facebook, and I'll definitely, I'm there. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop recording.